Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of the X Button. This is one of your co hosts, Alejandro, aka the Slayer Giant. And with me is my co host,
That's me, Paul. I am the dork of art, as you can find me
Slash,
on
or the
Twitter,
Angel Sword.
or the Angel Sword on Twitter, a
Hey,
Twitch,
Paul.
one of those two.
Yeah.
Hey,
How you been?
Alejandro, how's it going? I have had quite a week. What are we talking about today?
Oh, man. There's a lot to talk about, so no need to stick around with the minutia of what we've been. It's just been really pretty good. Just life, same as you. You came back
Yep,
from a wedding, I heard,
I
but
did. My
that's all everyone
brother
wants
got
to do.
married. That was a lot of fun for them, and they're off in Disney World now.
That's
So
awesome.
they're having fun. He's actually probably going to rub in my face that he got to go to the Galaxy's Edge before I did, and I just realized that today, and I'm really mad at him.
Man, yeah. Well, it's been the last time I was at Disney was in 2007, so I haven't been to Disney in 14 years. So
Wow, it's it's been a good few for me as well. I not as much as 14, but
yeah,
it's night and day now from what was going on. I mean, they still had the fast pass machines. I'm pretty sure when I went last, so goes to show you how long that's been.
ooh yeah, I remember that.
Um,
But
well,
they would
let's
even
see.
have Fast Pass, but there will still be a long line. So what the heck
Yes,
is that Fast Pass?
I don't know what they're gonna do next, but they're trying something. Um, man, but let's see. What have you been playing, Alejandro?
Yeah. So what
We
I've
had
been
homework.
playing? Yeah, we did have homework. Before I said I go into my homework because I have to hear from you too. I finished replaying the Resistance trilogy on
Oh, how
PS3,
was
like
that?
all back to back. They still hold up pretty well, and I still say that if Insomniac is secretly remastering it to release it, people will be very happy about it because those games still hold up. And I can't
Hmm.
imagine they will be even better with like more modern Code of Pain because those games are blurry, blurry. I want to
Yes.
tell you,
Oh my
it's not
goodness.
on PS3. Like when you go like two generations back, now that we're in the PS5, Xbox Series X generation, and those consoles would top at 720p, you realize how blurry things were that we used to think were beautiful. So, other thing that
Yeah.
I played a couple James Bond games, Quantum of
Really?
Solace. Yeah, because again, I was like, I'm playing on PS3 right now as I'm waiting to muster the desire to play more things in more modern hardware, which I actually did for our homework. Um, I played Quantum of Solace that came out in 2008, which was a game made on the Call of Duty engine. I don't know if you ever played it.
No, but that sounds interesting. A James Bond game made on the Call of Duty engine. How does it play?
It doesn't have the frame rate that makes Call of Duty, so they kind of screwed up the engine there. But it's still fun. It's interesting. I used to love James Bond games growing up, so the fact that we haven't gotten a single one since like 2011 has been
Dude,
bananas. So,
the James Bond IP needs a new revamping, I would
which
say. I
which
mean,
would
they've been working on it, and they've been changing it as time goes on. But I agree, like there needs to be some shaking up more so. I think that we do need a new James Bond game because some of the PS1 era games were some of the greatest things.
especially the
Um,
PS2 one. The PS2 ones were also great.
oh yeah,
Nightfire,
I
everything or
missed out on a
nothing.
lot
I
of
think it
those,
was.
honestly.
Uh, they did one for Russia with Love, which was one of my favorites also. But do you know who's making a new Bond game?
Who?
IO Interactive, the
Really?
the Hitman people. Yeah,
I think I remember hearing that now.
yeah, that
Why?
was earlier this year because this year feels like already has been like a full year already.
It feels like it's been so long. They haven't given us any details, right? Just that
Yeah,
they're working on one.
yeah, it's just called Project 007 for them, and considering they did Hitman, and those games are
You know
hilarious
what?
in their
I'll
stealth.
take it.
Yeah.
And especially now that we're going back from the every video game needs to be open world,
Hmm.
I think James Bond can really thrive in that because a lot of people probably would have wanted the James Bond, but open world London and all that stuff, and then we realize that that's not always guaranteed to be a good game if you
Hmm.
make it open world because
Yeah,
usually you add a lot of extra stuff that doesn't need to be in there, and sometimes you just need a really good shooter.
yeah. And the thing with not just that, like Hitman's a perfect example of doing a contained open level.
That too.
So you still have that freedom to play however you want, since you like games to give you so many options
Hmm.
to
Well,
tackle
back
it.
to
That's
our
one of them.
sandbox talk the
Yeah,
last week.
and that's all about the sandbox. Imagine now that kind of sandbox with James Bond like tools,
Oh, absolutely. The
salivating.
gadgets,
Yeah.
the different ability. Shoot, I mean, just Hitman with better shooting features. I'm going to
Hmm.
start with the hot takes today. Hitman,
Yeah.
get your crap together with your shooting mechanics.
Yeah, they're intentionally crap because they don't want you to shoot
I
a.
know, but it's so dumb. If they're going to give me an arsenal, they need to let me use it. I don't want to
Yeah,
use a rubber duck all the time. Damn it.
or a flying suitcase
Yeah.
that curves.
I mean, I love it, but at least like give us a little bit of options here, guys. You're gonna give me all these shotguns and machine guns and grenades and all sorts of stuff. I need to not feel like I'm going to miss every shot.
Mhm. Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, and then the other thing I played was for book club. So passing
hmm
the ball to you, what have you been playing that was not book club?
that was not
Yeah.
that. Let's see. So I still have been playing a lot of Red Dead Online,
Mhm.
and I just got. No, that was actually in the book club. Okay, well, honestly, I haven't played a whole lot because I've been out of town most of the week,
Yeah,
and I've
which is
been
fair.
reading and drawing just a decent amount. But my book club game was Resident Evil 3,
Hmm.
and I have gotten about halfway through it, I think,
Hmm.
if I'm remembering what people were talking about on the playtime of that. And it is a solid game. It definitely benefits from the fact of all of the front end work they did on RE2.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like they just kind of did a side story with this, which I'm told that Resident Evil 3 already was considered a rush game back on the PS1 anyway.
Yeah,
And it was quicker, it was more action packed. And so this, oddly enough, is par
it's
for the
fitting.
course for that game.
Yeah,
I do think they could have stretched it a little of just the I wouldn't say stretch. They could have filled it more. It's like a nice big old duffel bag that you can take on an airplane, but it's only filled with like 2 pounds worth of stuff. Um, and they added the ability to dodge, which is amazing because even
it
with
changes everything.
the added ability for RE2 to move around while you're shooting and such, which I mean, I know that was a little changed since RE6, but
It
I
wasn't
mean,
good in RA6. It
it
was good
wasn't.
until. Yeah.
And I love the ability to dodge roll out of the way of someone to know I can kind of get out of this direction because otherwise you have to hit your what's it back and circle to turn around and
Hmm.
then you have to shamble away from everything because I always hated the idea that one of the only reasons the zombies are scary in these games is because you are so slow that you can't move to do anything in all
Yeah,
of this. I will say though, the hit registration for this dodge roll is garbage. I went so
and
many
shooting also
times,
shooting.
and the shooting is. I mean, I get they were saying that with that's supposed to be on purpose, but like I swear, every time you aim at somebody's head, they just magically know. They start giving you the
Yeah,
funky
because they go
moves.
like that. They move their head like this,
It's very dumb.
and supposedly they made it that if you shoot them right here,
Mm,
the bullet has to go here if you want the head to explode.
really, that
Yeah,
would make sense because I barely ever got that to happen.
yeah,
It was nice stockpiling ammunition and then to just go through a couple hallways, clearing dudes out left and right. I love that Carlos has like 200 bullets in his gun because I could just unload on the liquors. I love the way Nemesis looks.
hmm,
I hated the way he moved
where he's
because it
jumping
was
around.
well, I did like that because it's like, okay, cool. They're already always keeping him relevant because he technically moves slower than you, except for when he gets within a certain radius, and then all of a sudden he can move faster, which forces you to dodge. I think there was a couple of times with the camera that I was struggling with. Like, okay, I got caught by this zombie, and then the way he would move, he'd punch me, I'd fall down, and then I'd get up in time for him to punch me again. And so he just basically like Bobo dolled me, those like inflatable clown balloons where kids can like punch it. It was basically like that. He'd punch at me, I'd fall down, I'd come back up, and he'd punch me again, and then I'd die, until I died. And it was such a frustrating process because there was no way to dodge out of that.
Yeah, and do you know that you can stun Nemesis?
Yes, well, isn't that with like explosives and certain things? Because I've gotten him with like a hand grenade and stuff, and then I did the flamethrower fight,
Mhm.
and then he got the missiles, which that was a little frustrating because I felt like they were kind of cheating on the timing on some of those. Um, but then I would knock him down, and he'd kind of fall to his knees, and I'd get some kind of item and run away further. But
Oh, just you wait when you fight one of his later transformations.
oh, I'm sure. Because right now I'm in the sewers, back as Jill after playing as
It's
Carlos
Carla.
once, and
Have you seen the big frogs that
yeah,
appear there? Yeah.
I destroyed a good few of those. I haven't gotten a grenade launcher yet, but I keep getting ammo for it. So I
It's in that area. Just keep
okay.
looking. Yeah.
I just haven't gotten through very far. I do like the creativity that they use because they clearly don't have as many resources for environment, so you have to go through the same hallways multiple times. I did like that you go through a lot of this stuff with certain things not being able to be opened, and then once you've kind of exhausted your resources and you pick up the item that you need, it gives you just enough. Like I found most of those lock picked lockers had first aid kits in them. So I'm like using this first aid spray as soon as I get it because I just finished surviving Nemesis and I'm back to danger. And they just give me enough to feel like I can just barely keep ahead of everything that's coming after me. Um, I really don't like how it takes you so many bullets to knock down some of these zombies, and then you come back after going into another room, and then they come back to life. I was like, I know I put 10 bullets into your head. Don't even give me that by getting up. But I guess not to get on any rants. I
Mhm.
enjoy it. It's got a great cadence. Um, it's simple. It feels like it was a 90s action movie put into the modern day, which I love personally.
What do you say? It's simple and clear.
Yes. Yes, I would. It's simple and clean.
Yeah.
And it's fun and I like Jill. I didn't play too much with her in it beforehand cuz I was like 6 when Resident Evil 3 and
When were you
came out.
born?
92.
I was 93, so yeah, I think it came out in 97.
Yeah, either the
So you're
97 or
enduring there.
98. I saw a sign that said something about 98, but I
Yeah,
wasn't
probably.
sure
I
if I
think it was
was
probably, yeah,
originally.
I might be wrong then. I think because 98, I think was RE2, and this one came in a year or two later.
Hmm.
So say probably were six. Yeah. So yeah, that was
Okay,
right.
so
How
yeah,
do you think you would have felt if you had bought that game at $60
I
though?
would have felt ripped the frick off.
Yeah,
I am very glad that I got it at $20 because the knowledge that I am about halfway through after an afternoon of playing the game
probably 2 hours.
with hardly anything else. I mean, like, I get it. You can go back through the game with harder difficulty. You can play through in different ways, I guess. But, and like they say, they give you the was it the
Project Resistance.
reverse? Or no,
No, Project
resistance.
Resistance. Reverse is
Yeah,
for eight for
that's right.
Village. Yeah,
Gosh, what is it with them and putting this
awful multiplayer.
awful multiplayer into these games and then saying, "Oh, that justifies the idea."
What's
Of all
funny
that.
is that if you remember back in the PS3 360 era, that's how devs would justify their prices, like campaigns that were like 3 to 4 hours long, and here's a
Hmm.
multiplayer, here's $60. So it's funny that Capcom's going back to that. But what's funny is that RE2 didn't have multiplayer and I still will say that one was worth the 60.
Oh, that was. But I mean,
Yeah,
they had an entire. They had two full
playthroughs.
campaigns
Hmm.
that you could go through with very different storylines that you could weave in between. But I digress,
Yeah.
and I hand it off.
Yes. And for me, it was Mafia Definitive Edition.
And how
So
was that?
it's been interesting because I started playing it, and I was very impressed with the extent that they went to remake the video, like at least graphically, a game from 2002. Because I played through the first section, which I'll get into it in a little bit, and went back and saw the original PC game from 2002, and wow, it's like, did you ever play Mafia 3?
I did, yeah.
Which I think you would have felt more connected to Mafia 3 because basically the environment was New Orleans, right? In
Yeah,
Mafia
and
3,
oh,
yeah.
yep.
So,
And I was very familiar with a lot of places in the game.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so
yeah.
I think Mafia 3, the best thing that game nailed, and I think Mafia generally nails, is like the ambience and like its
Hmm.
storytelling and the way it fit and the way it's all framed and it's all acted. So that wasn't quite at that quality back in 2002, which obviously it was 2002.
Yeah.
People didn't have an idea how to make cinematic games, so they put the things that they got right in Mafia 3 and rejiggered it in this definitive edition. I appreciated that. As a game, though, woof, the opening sections of that game are probably the worst opening sections I've played in a game in years.
Really?
Yes, because you're driving a cab for almost an hour, a very slow driving cab on top of it. So the game starts with a chase. Like you play as this dude named Tommy that gets two mafia dudes like jump into his cab and say you have to run away from this other mafiosos, and they're like pursuing you and shooting, and you're just like, for some reason it tops at 40 like, in speed, and everyone starts like just jumping around ahead of you and start shooting, and you can't shoot back. You have to hope for your partners to shoot at them, but it doesn't seem like they're making any damage. And then eventually you reach a point where you have to like go through this, I wouldn't even call it obstacle course, but very scripted moments for the your car chasers to crash.
Mm.
And I died a couple times there because it was just too, the car was just too slow. At first I thought it was my controller, because I was playing on a controller that I remember I played Watch Dogs 2 last year, that even though I'm holding the R2 full throttle, it wasn't fully accelerating, but when I switched to another controller, it would go faster. So I
Mm.
switched controller, but it was still slow. I was like, what's going on here? Then after I beat that, then you have to like ride or keep riding around, like taking people as if you're a normal cab. There's some nice dialogue there, but you're just basically just standing until see a triangle or a diamond to show, oh yeah, go here to pick, and go pick it up there. Kind of like a all GTA 4 cab missions.
Yeah.
Um, and then that's when it teaches you that if you press the touchpad, that's when you like take the limit off of the 40 speed limit, because you can like put a limit so that you can be riding, coasting by, so that you don't go over speed and accidentally hit someone, because they have
Oh,
the GTA style uh, cop,
wanted.
yeah, wanted system. So I'm like, why didn't you tell me when I had the previous persecution that had people shooting at me, and I'm riding at 40 and everyone's like getting ahead of me and shooting
Jeez.
me. It's that was really rough. But then once you start going on foot, it feels a lot like Mafia 3, which I would hope it did, because Mafia 3 came out in 2016, and I would hope that a definitive edition would feel a little bit more modern. But once you start like moving around, like they teach you a little bit of the stealth that also feels a lot like Mafia 3. The gunplay
Yeah.
also feels a lot like Mafia 3. And I'm like, okay, I'm seeing some of the things I enjoyed from that game in this, but I wouldn't be surprised if people start playing it and do that whole cap section and bounce. Like
Mm.
I'm not even kidding. It's bad. And even the gunplay, like it feels like Mafia 3, but not quite. I don't know how to explain it. It's like, oh yeah, it seems like they're working the same way, but I feel it feels a tiny bit sluggish compared to 3. Kind of like Red Dead almost. There's a certain like animation
Hmm.
uh, kind of, do you know how Red Dead 2, they added extra long animations for you to pick stuff and all
Yep.
that. It feels like they got inspired for that. Like, oh, people seem that love Red Dead 2, so let's try to do that for this. And I'm like,
Hmm.
because I remember things being more
Punchy.
quicker
Yeah.
in Mafia 3. So
It kind of was, and that one of the things that I loved about Mafia 3 the most was definitely the gunplay because it
mhm,
certainly wasn't the driving.
yeah,
Um,
especially
and
with no fast travel because you're always driving around in that game.
right,
How do you have an
um,
open world game with no fast travel in modern day? In modern day,
that does actually blow my mind sometimes. But yeah, just to add a tiny amount was the gunplay was fantastic with Mafia 3, and I remember seeing that it was almost like a mirror image of Lincoln Clay was the way he kind of aimed his gun,
yeah.
and they said, "Oh, we put so much effort to make sure that like was Tommy Angelo feels different from Lincoln Clay," and then
No,
they
but
showed
the
him
animation, the way how they pops it up
exactly the
is the
same.
same. Yeah. So
Um, so I don't know what they were thinking with that, but I was the most probably interested in both the story for that because I never played the original and the
story's great.
world.
Yeah, the story is
Um,
it made me itch to watch The Godfather again.
ooh,
It's so I know it's doing something right because when again it happens to me when you watch something so good, you're itching to play something similar in a different medium. It's doing that for me. Where
I know the feeling very well, actually. Yeah.
yeah, so I feel I might stick it out because one thing I do appreciate the about this one compared to Mafia 3 had the Assassin's Creed 1 problem where if you wanted to advance the story or do like the big missions, you had to do like a lot of banal side
Hmm.
activities to fill
Tiny little
something.
things that didn't really feel great at all.
Yeah, and you did them over and over and over again. They were not
Yep.
varied enough. This one seems like it's more point to point.
Hmm.
Just go here, and that's how Mafia used to be. 'Cause same with Mafia 2. Is like
Yeah,
the open worlds were barren of
they
things to do
were.
other than finding like 115 magazines, which there's magazines in this one too. But if you're just wanting a game without busy work, I think that's the thing that eventually when I got out of that horrible beginning and got a gun and started to feel it out a little bit more. I'm like, okay, there's some problems here, but I could stick it out here because I I know that I've been open world fatigued for a while. Our episodes from last year made that very clear. Our
Hmm.
chats made that very clear. I do appreciate open worlds that don't have busy work and you can just feel like you get a good experience just by going through it. And this one's designed for you to just basically go through it. I think that will be enough for me to try to stick it out. I don't know if I'll beat it before other things, but I think it's still decent. If I had to rate, I think this is a solid 7. Like this is a set. Like if you don't mind playing a game that's a 7 and you find it on sale and you're
Hmm.
interested in like a mafioso story and you enjoyed Mafia 3 despite its bloatiness
True.
of the side quest, this is basically that without that. So maybe that. Yeah, the thing is that if you want to purchase it, the way how I bought it, you could buy the game alone for like I think it was $29 or $25, or you can get it through a trilogy, and that trilogy has been on sale,
Yeah.
like for like 30 something, and you get all three games. I
Right.
would recommend getting it through there if you're interested, or you can even get like your RE3, which is
Yeah.
$20 or cheaper.
I
Yeah.
messed up because I already have Mafia 3 and then I bought Mafia 2 for $15. So
Ooh.
now I
Yeah,
realized
you have to buy it now at
I'm
25 or 29 when it goes on
basically
sale.
just hope for the best with that one. But at least at the start it's not full price.
Hmm.
So that's one benefit for that.
Yeah, it's like
So,
thirty nine
all
ninety
right.
nine just by itself. So yeah, that was our book club. And are you do you want to continue playing RE3 until you finish it,
I
or
definitely
yeah,
will, especially with how short it is.
yeah,
I don't think I have too much more of it to go.
yeah? I'll stick it out one more week with this, see how far I get, and we'll reconvene in the book club next week and see if there's other things in our backlog that we'll continue.
Yes.
So Paul, that was what we've been playing basically, and today it's a handful of news.
Oh,
So
yes, it is.
press X.
For some news. Welcome to Xcape Media.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a quick reminder. Yeah, the X button is still it's under the umbrella for Escape Media because we all need a fun escape for a couple hours a week sometimes. So let's talk about some hot messes right now. But first, Just in follow up from the final piece, one of the final pieces from last week's news. Remember the whole thing about Crash Bandicoot
Hmm.
and developer Toys for Bob apparently having been having suffered layoffs, and now they're basically put in Call of Duty purgatory forever. Well, Activision responded, and they went to talk to GameIndustry.biz, which is a very reputable website for very serious like business side of business things in games. That's who you would go to talk about like numbers or more corporate stuff. And
Hmm.
obviously, Activision Big Corporation. They talked to them and they claimed that no layoffs happened at Toys for Bob, and that the developer will continue supporting Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, which just recently released its next gen port in March, as well as provide development support for Call of Duty Warzone's new season, as we mentioned last week. Do you
Right.
believe them, Paul?
I see. This is a weird
Yeah.
situation because this is coming without any actual statements from the people
Mm-hmm.
supposedly that were laid off in the first place. So I feel like if there were layoffs, wouldn't any of those people that got laid off say anything
Yeah.
unless there was pressure? Also, I mean, just by itself, it seemed like a little bit of a weird piece of news that we found in the first place. It was like, this is abrupt, weird, and if Activision's really so focused on money, Crash Bandicoot 4 was a decent success, I would say.
Yes, but the Insane Trilogy sold exponentially more, but for
I
obvious
mean,
reasons.
both. Like just the fact that that is the definition of diversifying, and any business-minded person, even if they have one thing that is going to be making a lot more money, it is within your greatest interest to diversify
Your
in any
portfolio.
way you can, to have the ability to make money from different things at any point. So the fact that they would completely cut out Toys for Bob and make them a subsidiary of
Mhm.
support for Warzone by itself doesn't make any sense, even if you are a business and money minded person.
Yeah, I investigated a little bit more where the claims came from, and
Yeah,
apparently, because originally this news broke because at the same time that Toys for Bob announced on Twitter that they were now supporting Warzone's new season,
right.
some character artists they went to Twitter saying that they were no longer working there. But the thing is that what happened was that it wasn't quite a layoff, but the contract wasn't renewed. So that's
Oh,
the
yeah. Because I
so
was going to say Twitter artists, that's like contract work.
yeah, and it happens. Like, there's people that are on the payroll for longer, and those get laid off, and there's
Hmm.
the contract workers, and because those contracts weren't renewed, then and because the art that they were making was very specific for Crash Bandicoot,
Hmm.
which you're not gonna put that kind of art in Warzone
Hmm.
unless weird things are happening, which I
Yeah.
doubt. Um, then that's what started to signal that Toys for Bob just went the way of Raven Software and all these other former game developers that have just been put
Okay.
in
So
Call
it's
of Duty
kind of like a
Purgatory.
knee jerk reaction to a little bit of
Yes.
unrelated
At the same
news.
time, it's very interesting that Activision made clear that they were going to keep supporting Crash Bandicoot 4 specifically, not just the
That
series, just
seems like a
Crash
weird
Bandicoot 4.
statement.
Yeah, because that's you can read into that what it means is that yeah, that's the game they already make, so they'll just keep updating it, if anything, because that game hasn't had any DLC. To be fair, like
No.
no announcement for that. The only thing that they've added to it was the proper next gen version that came out
Hmm.
2 months ago. So it almost feels like a tacit, almost implicit way of saying, yeah, these people we're just putting these people on Call of Duty now, but there's still that game that put out, so they'll still kind of keep an eye on it, which that still sucks personally, because it's again just the whole thing that Activision just so tied to the hip into Call of Duty, because obviously it sells, but how soon before that thing finally it's driven into the ground and it's no longer
Hmm.
the thing that keeps making them billions of dollars. But to be fair, like Warzone really revitalized that series, at least in popularity, because at least just the purchase games other than Modern Warfare, everything was going downhill.
It
Like
was.
world, like I think mentioned, World War II kind of came in like a fart in the wind, despite that game kind of getting progressively better. Black
Hmm.
Ops 4 sold a lot immediately, but immediately tanked off. Like there was no interest in their battle royale sucked. Like no
enough
one.
to give it away for free
Yeah,
at
and
one
that's the thing.
point.
Like I don't even think the Blackout Battle Royale from Black Ops ever went free to play. That was their big mistake. They tied it to the purchase, so that's why Warzone was free
Oh
because
yeah,
they learned their mistake
I
from that
think
one.
eventually it did go free to play, but
If it did, no one even knows because
yeah.
because even Apex Legends still charts, and that
Hmm.
and their 3v3 mode that we talked about last week, like that has been a huge success for them. I've been seeing a
Immensely.
lot of it's been popping up on Twitch.
Hmm.
So at least when it comes to the purchasing there, and Activision is all about making more money, more money, more money. Warzone made a lot of money, a lot of money. So that's why they feel so more tied to that. Even though they said in the financial statement, I didn't put it there in our document because I was kind of reading. They say that they're looking to give the Call of Duty treatment to their other franchises, and I'm like, what do you mean with that? Like,
Crash Bandicoot Battle Royale.
I mean, do you know that there's a Final Fantasy VII Battle Royale that's coming?
I wish I
In
wouldn't get reminded of that.
yeah, on mobile of all things. So everything can be a battle royale these days.
Hmm.
So that's still a
Unfortunately.
thing that just won't die. But yeah, so just that follow up for that story, I still very skeptical that we'll ever see another proper Crash Bandicoot game unless the market really decides. But the truth is was that the Insane trilogy at $40, three games that everyone loved, sold huge for years. Like it kept selling bigger and bigger for like it came out just on PS4 in 2017. Then when it came to Switch and Xbox the year after, it kept selling. It was always charting in the UK. So there was interest there. But Crash Bandicoot 4 is just one game and was sold at 60. So I'm like, and I haven't seen the chart in the NPD, which is like which tracks sales charts and all
Hmm.
that. So it was a moderate success, but maybe not like the humongous success that Crash 1, 2, and 3 were in the Insane trilogy. So unfortunately with Activision is like you have to make the gazillions, even if you're making billions, or you're out, which it's not healthy for the industry. I'll keep saying that.
No, it is not.
So
And goodness, that's like EA levels.
yeah, but the thing is, EA's been better at that. That's what's funny.
Exactly.
Activision has just gotten worse and worse. Like we have broken many records. By the way, we're gonna lay off 800 people.
Hmm.
So it's like it's so horrible. It's like you lay off when it's like we haven't made the money we were expecting. So obviously that comes with adjustments. But no, we had a record breaking year, which means we're laying off 800 people. That's what happened like 2 years ago. They're just a horrible company, but everyone buys their games, myself included. So it happens.
One day it's got to catch up with them.
Oh yeah,
And
but the thing is, I buy them for the campaigns. Like I don't engage with multiplayer, so
I'm
and I
certainly
co
not.
and I co buy them with my brother. That's my thing. So I'm like,
At least you get to do that
yeah.
much.
But for the people that have to plop now, that's going to cost 70 because the PS5 version of Black Ops Cold War was 70 on PS5. So
Hmm. Not to
that's
mention the immense amount of inflation of prices on cosmetics.
ooh yeah
It is $20 for some of these skins, because they'll put it in as like a character skin and like maybe one or two gun skins, and people will buy like two or three of them sometimes, and then they've basically bought the whole game two or three times as well.
yeah
And it blows my mind.
yeah. And speaking of
Um,
microtransactions, we're now heading into some hotness
that
that has
yes, we
some
are.
that has something related to that. So you may or may have not noticed, but both Epic Games and Apple have been in a lawsuit nightmare after Epic sued Apple last year. For context, what happened was that Epic included like a way to circumvent using the Apple Store to buy currency from within
Oh
Fortnite,
yeah, I remember
and
that
that was
now.
prohibited. And then Apple completely banned Fortnite
Hmm.
from the iOS store, and then Epic, instead of removing their circumvention, because they're like, Apple was like, just remove that and you're gonna be back. No, they went on this whole lawsuit. Epic made like a 1984 commercial with a hashtag
Oh, that's right.
free Fortnite, and then trying to rallying everyone at their cause and saying that Apple was in the wrong despite them violating Apple's terms of service. So so then that lawsuit happened. I think it was around last August, and how it happens when lawsuits happen. there's some hearings, and then you go to court. This last week was court.
Mm-hmm.
So the big thing that Apple is suing, I mean, that Epic is suing Apple for, is not just necessarily that they got removed from the Apple Store, but Epic wants to fight Apple's cut
Oh my
from
goodness.
from their marketplace. So kind of like supposedly every purchase that anyone makes from anything
Mm-hmm.
in the Apple Store, especially when it comes to games, 70% of that cut goes to developers, 30 goes to Apple. And according to Epic, that's not good enough. Which they changed that in their own store when they debuted the Epic Game Store. The cut they made to developers was 88% for devs, 12% for them,
Hmm.
which it was revealed it's not part of this, but it just shows that Epic is operating with huge losses doing that, but they're doing that because they're all about the goodwill of bringing everyone in. So, and they're
Mm-hmm.
alleging that Apple's ecosystem is too closed off, the whole iOS, and it doesn't allow for like competing stores like PC, and they want that to happen for there to be like more competition and blah blah blah.
Hmm.
So they've been they've been arguing about that, and it's just been stupid. Like it has gotten to the point where they're like throwing crap at each other in front of the judge. Like, listen to this one. Apparently, Epic. Like, I'm reading this from a tweet. A counteract that Apple throw at Epic for why they don't want to leave. They don't want to have Fortnite back in the store is because the peely the banana skin is inappropriate without clothing, and that's like messing up kids and blah blah blah.
That's
and and they put
funny.
and they put a photo of the peely in court, and the argument was like, it's just banana, man. Follow Nick Stat on Twitter to follow up this nonsense. It's amazing. But oops, yeah, that's the kind of like you've reached Strawman's arguments now.
That is that is an interesting level of reaching right there.
Hashtag Save Satire 2021.
Oh my gosh.
So, but here's what's interesting for us because I couldn't
Mhm.
give a crap about what's dealing with both of them because I don't play Fortnite. I don't care about iPhone, about Fortnite even being back in the iPhone. That's not what's interesting. What's interesting is that somehow at this court, there's been a lot of behind the scenes dirty laundry from many things that have come out in the open from other companies,
Hmm.
including, like, for example, number one of this one. Remember the whole crossplay fiasco with PlayStation when
Yeah.
all the consoles were like allowing crossplay and PlayStation were about, they were like, we're the best place to play. We don't need
Yeah.
any of that. We're protecting the kids. um, and that they finally botched in 2018. So supposedly, how that happened was that Epic settled with Sony and PlayStation, where Sony would allow crossplay for Fortnite as long as Epic would compensate Sony for potential revenue lost if a player were to play the game on a PlayStation platform, but microtransactions were done elsewhere. Like, oh yeah, you play on PlayStation and then you go to your bed with your and log into Fortnite in your phone, and that's where you do the B box purchases and all that. And
Huh.
apparently, the algorithm that they have in the game allows them to identify where the purchases are being made. So Epic was like, yeah, we're gonna do we'll compensate, and supposedly it was if the purchasing was beneath like 0.85%, it didn't matter. But if it was about 0.85% of like B bucks purchased by a single person um, on another platform, then Epic would have to pay Sony for like
Wow.
revenue lost. And you could say that it's kind of what's funny is that it's a way of seeing Sony as being ridiculous and the bad guy here. But if you think about it in business, from a business perspective,
Hmm.
that's kind of smart for Sony because their reality is Microsoft and Nintendo were allowing crossplay because they were not number one. Sony has been selling a lot. Like crossplay doesn't benefit anyone. Like crossplay at this point benefit everyone but Sony
Yeah.
because less of an inclination for people to buy there. So it's interesting that Sony is the only one that got this arrangement because, according to the documents, no similar arrangement for Microsoft and Nintendo. So,
Hmm.
what do you think?
I I mean, if I were Sony, I would love this deal because that I mean, it's weird because it doesn't show it on the side of the consumer. We wouldn't know
Mm,
about it at all. So therefore it doesn't affect our image of them.
yeah.
But as Epic, they'd be like, well, we know that I found out just today actually that the console or the system that most people play on is actually the PlayStation 4.
Hmm.
So this would vastly benefit them, and Epic would be way too afraid of people losing their biggest method of people playing the game on that system. So Epic would lose out because then there's not that many people buying things, microtransactions on the for their game on the biggest system that people play on.
Hmm.
And then for Sony, since so many people play on it, they can point to that and say, "Hey, look at all the business we're doing for y'all. If you don't compensate us for whatever they might do elsewhere, maybe we'll just pull it entirely ourselves." So
Yeah.
they have the ability to make that claim and be able to back it
Yeah.
up.
And the interesting thing is that this only happened because Fortnite became like the biggest game in the world because Sony had been blocking crossplay for other games like Rocket League and even Minecraft, which
Mm.
were pretty big. But Fortnite is just so much exponentially bigger
And I
than
don't.
those
You
other
might
games.
already
So
know this number, but I found out it was $9 billion over the last 2 years is what Fortnite has made.
imagine,
And
no, just
if
a
I'm
game, and that's
Sony,
just a
I want
game.
a piece of that pie.
Which ironically, because Sony actually invested in Epic, they're like a minority share
Shareholder?
investor, shareholder. Yeah,
Really?
yeah, they
Well then,
invested in. They've invested like 500 million on Epic
well man,
over the past
it's
year. So
they've
they
they've
now
got
make
Epic
money.
by the
Yeah,
oh my gosh,
but that's the
they've
thing.
got it.
500, but 500 million is nothing for the. Just imagine 500 million is like $5
Oh,
in
nothing. No.
comparison to like the 9 billion.
But
But
for
they
Epic,
still,
who didn't really have that kind of resources when that happened, that was a big
yeah,
deal.
yeah, but that's the thing. Epic already had the resources. They invested in Epic when Epic was already the biggest thing. So it's
That's
so
true.
funny that in this back and forth, they were able to strike this deal, but then Sony also ended up winning in many ways. So sometimes we talk about Sony being stupid, and I know
Mm.
they have been many times, but they was almost savvy, like as just as savvy as the Discord thing from last week that broke right as at the end of our recording,
Hmm.
where where Microsoft was going to gobble what they were wanted to gobble up Discord, and I think the reason why that didn't happen was because what's another thing Microsoft owns, Paul, that is similar to Discord?
Um, well, I'm absolutely blanking out on it, but it's going to be obvious the second you tell me.
I'll give you a hint. It has a blue icon. It also has an S, and it's built into pretty much every
Oh,
computer.
Skype.
Yeah.
What the frick? Yeah, that's right.
So
Which
I wonder if they realized that they couldn't go forward acquiring Discord because having already acquired a similar platform in Skype, and then that one,
that would be in danger of a monopoly, I
yeah,
guess,
yeah. So
unless they disbanded one of the two companies.
yeah, but maybe that was the problem, and maybe Discord also didn't want to sell. So because right now
Well, yeah,
Discord,
because they
it's
didn't
booming.
they didn't want to probably sell out to Microsoft entirely, which that was their
Hmm.
intention. Which this one, with the partnership with Sony, is that Sony is a minority shareholder. They're
Hmm.
not actually buying the whole company,
Yeah,
which is probably what they learned when Discord didn't want to sell to Microsoft entirely. They said, "Oh well, we're not going to buy you. We're
hmm,
just going to get enough to be a minority shareholder, and then we'll work together. You know, then
exactly.
you
Yeah,
don't have to do anything. You're not required. It's no ring on it.
yeah,
You get to
yeah.
shop around."
And that's like Sony's strategy because Sony doesn't have the wherewithal to spend so much like Microsoft that overspent with Bethesda
Yeah.
in a way that
Oh,
even
we
Disney
talked
did and
about
with
that.
Star Wars, like we did last
Yep.
week, like we talked about last week. So it's interesting that Sony still is doing those smart investments because they still make. In one of the podcasts I listen, it's called Sacred Symbols. The main dude there, he says, "Why buy the cow if you can get the milk?"
Oh my gosh. I literally just listened to that John Mulaney quote. I watched that exact comedy show
Uh,
and listened to him dismantle that whole phrase.
Mhm.
So it's funny that you actually said that. It was weird
Yeah, that
timing.
wasn't planned. So yeah, so it's interesting that that's the way Sony does, because the thing is, when Sony has acquired like some of the studios that they acquired, they didn't blanket purchase them. They worked with them. They invested with them. They partnered with them, and then after a few years, put the ring on them. Kind of like they did with. That's how they did with Naughty Dog. That's how they did with this. They did with Sucker Punch. It took them longer, but that's how they did it with Insomniac. They take like the long road for it, and it has reaped them good benefits. So it's interesting that they're still pursuing that with all these big, huge earners like Epic
Hmm.
and Discord. So other things that came out of this thing, and this one confounds me because why would Epic have this? So the Epic lawsuit also hilariously made public an internal review Microsoft did about their thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. Think about it like opposition research, where if you ever done like market research and you have like a direct competitor, you look at their product and then you analyze it like with a SWOT analysis and all of
Yeah.
that. And they did one for The Last of Us Part 2, which is interesting
Hmm.
because this has been like the most public document we've ever seen of that kind of opposition research that happens within the big players. So obviously, like this is not just Microsoft doing it. Obviously, Sony does this, but that's always internal. But in this one, it's about what they thought about The Last of Us Part 2, and some of the things they see objectively are things that I agree with, like the quality of the visuals and the way they tell their story. You can debate about the quality of that story,
Right.
but when you look at it at the way they presented that, that's like beyond what many other games did,
Hmm.
while also criticizing the game's gunplay, which they always say has always been subpar in all of Naughty Dog's games. Something I
That
always agreed with.
is
Their gunplay
amazing.
never, they never feel good. The guns, whether it was in Uncharted, even in Last of Us, and I would
Hmm.
say The Last of Us 2 got the closest, but it's still not quite there yet.
I think
Uh,
the gunplay was very strong in Last of Us 2. That was one of the few things I did genuinely enjoy. The aiming
yeah,
was very
aiming.
difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah,
at
I'll
the
give them that.
yeah, yeah. That's the thing. Gunplay, like when the bullets hit enemies and all that. I think the force feedback on Last of Us Part 2 was the best it's been in any of Naughty Dog's games. Like
Hmm.
you felt the punch of every gunshot coming at you or going there. But the aiming stick, the right stick movement, the death zone, things like that. It's like it's not as refined as other more more focused third person shooter like Gears of War, or even a personal favorite of mine, Vanquish. That's so tight.
Mm,
That's so
yeah,
incredibly tight.
that is true.
And one would say that's for design because that game's not a third person shooter, it's more of a survival game. But when you have shooting and it still doesn't feel like we were talking with Resident Evil, it's like
Right.
it's better, but still not quite there yet. So
Yeah.
it is
Um,
interesting that seeing it being said like a company as objectively as Microsoft saying it to that. And it makes me curious to see what Sony or even Nintendo thinks of their opposition research. Kind of like that, but
here's my devil's advocate argument. If you had perfect first person shooter gunplay mechanics, would either of those games be as tense or horrifying
mhm.
as
Which
they
it's
are?
yeah,
So where
it's
does
worth
it
the
where does it go with the, like, how intentional is it
hmm
that it's actually clunky
yeah.
to shoot something, and like maybe the character themselves, like Resident Evil 7's shooting being
hmm
pretty garbage at times because the character himself has no actual training.
hmm
I
Yeah, to
don't.
yeah, I think the way you can make the argument for both is that it's compared to the other series Naughty Dog made on that same mold, sort of Uncharted.
All right, that's
That
fair.
it's more yeah, that it's actually more of a third person shooter, and the aiming in those games also has that looseness on tight factor for a game that ostensibly the main mechanic there was shooting, 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 and you felt it.
That's true.
So you can compare it like yeah, Naughty Dog has never been it, but on Last of Us you can kind of like wave it because it's you're not meant to always be guns blazing, even though two allows you to be that,
Hmm.
to go all out. Even though
That is
you also could play like I did that game that I skipped so many combat sequences because it was so well designed to be able to skip,
true.
and
Hmm.
that felt uh, like something that that game was allowing you to do. Again, the sandbox we talked about. For
True.
a game has to be so well designed to allow it that way and for it to feel natural.
And they did a fantastic job with giving you those options,
Mhm.
those routes within it, but hiding them in such a way that it felt like an organic environment, not the Gears of War. Oh, look at all of these waist high
Waist high, yeah,
walls. Time to find out who's going to show up.
yeah, all the time. Like when the level design becomes so
Yeah.
obvious,
And
and
using the
and
environment to your advantage in Last of Us 2 feels very satisfying.
yeah, and I think that's to their credit. Like the environments there never feel like even the first game had that obvious. Oh, there's waist high here. There's gonna be a shooting. There's gonna be a
Hmm.
moment here, and Last of Us 2 felt more better designed for that. So
Yes, absolutely.
regardless of your thoughts of that game, because I know you have some thoughts,
We
I've
don't
had
have
some
to get into
thoughts.
that
Yeah, we
today.
don't have to get at that. It's interesting seeing a company analyze a game like that
Agreed.
and offering those thoughts. And you can find that document online. Why Epic had it, no idea.
Life's greatest
And
mystery.
yeah, there were many other ones, things, interesting tidbits that happened there. But another interesting one for me was that they revealed that Microsoft, at no point in their history, has had an Xbox console be profitable for them. Like at no point, even when
Huh.
they redesigned all of their hardware, they've never made money. Even their greatest success, the Xbox 360, which is the Xbox they've sold the most. That usually comes with territory because there was a long time, even going back to like PS2 or even GameCube,
Hmm.
that companies wouldn't make their money back just on the hardware sold,
It was from all of the either
the games.
games, the
Hmm.
accessories, and now services.
Hmm. Yeah, but this also, it's very interesting to know this coming from a generation that where Sony made profit off the PS4, and also Nintendo has made profit off the Switch.
Wait, did they
So
make profit on the
yeah,
PS4? They didn't initially, though, right?
it was really quick. They made profit really quick after 10 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a certain amount of time, though. I do remember that
Hmm.
they didn't make the money, and
Yeah.
then because of the sheer volume,
Yeah. And obviously, right now, Sony is not making money on the PS5,
well, there's my
but
PS5. So
yeah, well, obviously, well, yeah, they're selling like they're selling like crazy. So yeah, it's interesting
huh.
that this underlines why Microsoft focuses so much on money's made
Hmm.
when they go do their earnings. Like we talked last week about their 15 billion they made. That's still a lot of money, and they made that a lot through services. Not even just, especially nowadays, they care more about Game Pass than games sold, and they're
Yep.
still making their money. So yeah, again, interesting. This one I would understand Epic having it because it's kind of like what I told you that Microsoft stopped saying how many consoles they sold, but then you would hear some some exec at EA saying, "Oh yeah, we know that out in the wild there's 150 million consoles," and they would have those numbers because
Hmm.
they always get those numbers reported to them. And then Sony has always been like, "We have sold 114 million here." Then you can be like, "Okay, if they said there's this many consoles out in the wild, take the number that Sony has officially given and subtract the rest. That's how many Xboxes have sold."
Huh.
So very interesting thought experiments.
That very much is.
So this one's also interesting in the now it's moving on from the Epic lawsuit. Now we're moving to another lawsuit that this one's
What is up
probably.
with these? Everybody suing everyone out here
Hey, you
these
can make
days.
quick. Hey, if you sue someone and
Oh
win, you
my
can make a lot of
gosh.
money. So apparently, that's what happens when you deal at
I
the
will
corporate
say,
level.
it's almost not even about the suit anymore and more about the policy changes after the fact because the money that they might have to pay out is like pennies usually for these
Mhm.
people. But this one is very interesting to me, Alejandro. What are we talking about?
Yeah. So this lawsuit is it's in the works against Sony, and especially in regards to the pricing of digital items in the PlayStation Network store. Like the current problem is that retailers are now they this didn't used to be a problem, but now they're not legally allowed to offer digital games anymore at their stores. So like obviously you can buy like currency, like you buy a PS card that's like
Hmm.
$60, and then you punch in the code, put the money into the PS store, and then you just redeem the game from that store. There was a way to get like a card that was specifically for a game. I once did that
Yep.
almost 8 years ago. I bought Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag as a digital code from Walmart. I
Yep.
punched it in and got the game.
That's how I got Tekken 7, I think.
Yeah, and Sony took that out, and now they fully control how people can buy digital games, which is just exclusively by putting in money at the store and get it. And
Hmm.
buy it from the store. So that has created a false sense of supply and demand, and many consumers believe that it may count as like a monopoly from within um, the PlayStation ecosystem. So they apparently have grounds for that. So
I was certainly not aware of how bad this was because they didn't really talk too much about the idea of removing the ability to buy a digital
no,
game
they did it
from
quietly. They did it quiet. They
retailers.
did it very quietly. Late
Um,
2019, early 2020 is when they caught it.
yeah, and even like me, who has all these connections currently in the companies that are retailers for games specifically, the fact that none of them even talked about it at all or considered the ramifications of it is a big deal. Just how quietly they just shut that down. And I remember, I mean, the you and I have talked at length about the idea that when games go on sale on the PSN, uh, that's basically what they should already be at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, GTA should not be
60.
60
Yeah.
bucks.
But it
No
goes on
other
sale
game
a
should
lot.
be.
And
Yeah, it
that's what's funny. It
does.
always, but
That's the thing, though.
at base, it's always at 60 when it's not like on a specific sale.
Because nobody wants to buy a game that's base price has been moved down. They want something that they think they've gotten a deal on. It's
Mm-hmm.
all psychology, it's all manipulation. Because I've gotten that myself. I have owned games physically, seen a game that was on digital, and thought, I could get that. That's a good deal.
Case in point, I obviously I've said that this generation I went full digital. The very first year, I bought two discs, Killzone Shadowfall and Knack. Those games were $3 and $2
hmm
each in one of the sales. Bought them digitally, went and sold the disc because why
Exactly.
not? Because it's like the convenience. I did the same thing with Dishonored. Death of the Outsider
Yeah.
packed with Dishonored 2. I had the disc because my mom bought it for me for Black Friday 2016 because it was $30 at Black Friday that year, which was insane that it got discounted that quickly because the game came like
hmm
2 weeks before Black Friday, and I bought it in disc. And Death of the Outsider packed with Dishonored 2 at $12. I was like, goodbye disc. Like
I
there's
that's
no
one
need.
game series or game in general that I do wish I could like I would be willing to rebuy it on digital just because of how much I love Dishonored 2 and how little I want to go find the disc and reinstall it
Mm-hmm.
and then have to switch out. I've realized how inconvenient it is to have a disc in your system and have to go up and change the disc out to install that disc, and then you can't play
Boom.
any other physical games until that one's installed.
Oh, I've certainly been reminded of that
Jeez,
on PS3. Then I
what
told
is
you.
wrong with me?
No, 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 no. I what did I tell you years ago? Like when I met you, and we had that debate about me going full digital, and you
I
always
I was full only physical copies for the longest time.
digital is a drug. Once you get a taste of the convenience and seeing the way things can get steeply discounted on those sales, you can't go back.
I fully blame you.
Yeah,
You have corrupted me. You have been a poor influence on my life.
yeah.
I,
Digital master race.
gosh. Oh, there's just been so many games. I bought the Metal Gear Solid 5 Definitive Edition for $6
Sucks.
just a few days ago
Yeah,
actually. That was outside of the book club. I just remembered that a second ago.
yeah.
I bought that for a freaking tuxedo. I had the game not just physically, I had it digitally as well. The free version that they gave away, and I bought the definitive edition because I wanted to be stupid for 3 seconds.
Yeah. But then that's on you.
That's on me, but
Yeah, because when I get things in PS Plus, I always make sure that I still have PS Plus. So,
yeah, it did
but yeah.
help to find out that because my argument was always, well, if anything ever goes away from like the market or something, I have
Hmm.
the physical version. They
Yeah.
can't take away from that from me. I found out that the physical edition is not actually the game; it is only a physical license to
Hmm.
use the game. And basically, it's exactly the same. If they
And that's
remove
the
something from the market, I
and that's the
still can
thing.
play it.
And how it works is that even if something is removed, if you bought it before it was removed, you are always entitled to re-download it forever. Like a case in point, like a bunch of Marvel games. they were re-released on PS4, like Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2, The
Mm,
Amazing Spider-Man 2, Deadpool, all those games. Like Activision made a PS4 version or an Xbox One version of them and listed them digitally. But then the license got they the license fee they had ran out, so they had to remove it. But I you can still download them. So like I
huh.
bought Marvel Ultimate Alliance on PS4 in 2016. I re-downloaded and played it recently in
I guess
2021.
that depends on what it is because I mean the most
So
infamous.
PT is the only like has been like the one,
Okay, that's what I
but
was gonna say.
but that was because Konami went to extremes because it was a demo. That wasn't a game because it was a demo of a game
Oh,
that they were no longer gonna make. So they were making sure to try to scrub that off. But games that are still being able to be purchased by a disc because you put in because you're buying the license fee on a disc, then you're entitled to that license fee forever.
okay,
So
got it.
that's the tricky part.
I
But
see.
it's always about buying them because games can be delisted all the time, and it
Oh
happened
yeah.
recently a lot. So there's always
Hmm.
that worry. But as long as you buy them, it's always yours. The
Okay.
license is yours. So
So
now,
let's see. What are we dealing with next? It's
oh, okay.
still PS5,
Yeah,
right?
we're still in the Sony camp here.
Oh
So
boy.
what did I talk about last week, Paul?
We talked about the amazing ability that you could find any PS5 you ever wanted at any place as easy as pie. Wasn't that right?
I wish in an alternate universe that was right, but
Yeah.
no, we are in still in the middle of a freaking pandemic where these companies are not willing to just be like all willy nilly and be like, yeah, let's just send machines to be bought at store, like so people can walk in, see it, and buy it there from over the counter.
Hmm.
And there's been a scarcity because superconductors are just so in short supply these days.
Semiconductors.
Yeah, the semiconductors are in so short supply
Hmm.
that they're so impossible for Sony to build enough consoles to supply the immense demand there is for this machine. And if you thought that the scarcity was going to stop anytime soon, bad news. According to Sony's own Hiroki Totoki, he said, according to IGN, I don't think demand is calming down this year, and even if we secure a lot more devices and produce many more units of the PlayStation 5 next year, our supply wouldn't be able to catch up with demand. We expect this shortage to last all the way beyond 2022. So, Christmas will come, it'll be January 2022. It's still going to be a problem.
I it. I mean, I want to say it blows my mind, but
Yeah.
I know that this is only going to continue to get worse before it gets better
Mhm.
because even outside of the pandemic, even outside of the semiconductor problem of the materials being rare, I believe it was
Mhm.
like there's a shortage of the materials just to make the
It yeah,
semiconductors.
and the material is not only rare, the semiconductor is being used by way too many industries right now.
Hmm.
I mean, even for the freaking president of the United States addressed the semiconductor outage in its podium. Like freaking Joe Biden addressed that there's a semiconductor outage. That's how bad it is. When you have an old senile man that probably doesn't know how to count these days, still mentions
Oh my
it
gosh.
still mentioned that. Like that's how bad like this pandemic has really wrecked this. But I will also counter this that I know Sony has been stocking enough consoles because I know they've been doing like small restockings every week. I mentioned you the one that
Yeah.
the heartbreaking one that I had in Target.
Hmm.
Everyone's getting vaccinated. I've seen people go to Walmarts. I've seen people go to stores masked up, still living their lives, going into store. I've seen stores do the proper measurements,
Hmm.
taking the proper measurements to make sure everyone's healthy while browsing and that. It is time for them to like because they produce so many. Stop with just making them online only. Because that's the problem. It's all about you have to buy online and then go pick it up at the store. Now, send enough to be able to walk into the store and if you're lucky to buy them. They're they have obviously they've taken too many precautions, but they've sold 7.8 million already. Like at least Sony has already sold 7.8 million PS5s just through online. The world is slowly getting better now. Like obviously we're still in the middle of the pandemic, but we're in the point where we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. People are getting vaccinated. I'm next, hopefully you're next too. My family's already full vaxxed, and stores are already opening up. Just send it. Have the chance that you have your online stock and separate it from your in-store stock. That's how it works, right? You have like the online one. It's not the one and the same as the one in retail, right? You
Yeah.
always had separate ones so that you have enough to for the people that walk into the store and you offer it to them and they pay it there, right there and right then and then.
My concern about the split between online to retail is, where do you draw the line of what goes into retail? Because then that takes away resources that Sony could be using to just push out into the market as well as they can. Because when it's retail, they have to decide where it's going, they have to decide how much of where it's going,
Mhm.
and then what happens if that doesn't match what they're trying to do. And then affects possibly countries like where you're living, where of course say, hey, let's go retail. Well, of course they're going to send it to some of the bigger high tech countries
Mhm.
before a lot of other places, causing a trickle down effect where it might take even longer for you to reach
Mhm.
to get one.
Yeah,
Is That's what I'm worried about, I
yeah,
think.
but my thing is that since the demand is high anyway, there wouldn't be a problem of them sending them to the store and had the opportunity of someone to walk in and get it too. Like
Hmm.
they already said, the demand is of the stratosphere.
That's
They'll
true.
still sell them no matter what. And my thing is that I'd like for them to finally re-embrace just sending them to the store instead of relying on all these stupid companies' websites that are so vulnerable to bot scalping.
That's a good point.
So that's a that's a problem. Like none of these retailers, especially like, at least just talking in the U.S., they have put enough protections for you to when you have to make video guides on how to purchase something from a website. Like the dude I mentioned, Jake Randall, that gained so many subscribers by dedicating the last few months and investigating what to do with all the different quirks for these websites. Websites shouldn't have that. If you know it's a problem when you have to go to all these extraneous ways to get the machine online.
Yeah.
So, and it's been clear, like I've seen eBay, like they mark that thing up horribly. And it's because they take advantage of the systems because it's just online only. So now that things are getting better in the world, just start finally, at least three of them, GameStop here, three of them at Target, and don't announce, just put them there
Mm.
because those are the ones when you're browsing and you see, boom, at least for people to have the option to
Hmm.
not have to deal with the heartbreak of having to beat a bot. So,
Yeah.
so that's the thing. And now knowing that they see out all the way until 2022 for this to be fixed.
Hmm.
Now now this is going to be a reality for many. It's basically now luck in the chamber. This is Russian roulette. So,
Yeah,
and more, you got so lucky.
I did. I
Yeah, you got so freaking
I
lucky.
was the tinfoil hat man
Yeah,
that no one believed, and I was right about the world
yeah,
ending.
yep, exactly. So, but here's what's funny that Sony. I didn't put this in, but there was a report that Sony's already looking into adjusting how they make PS5s and changing a chip that they put in. That right now is like seven
I did see
millimeters.
that.
Yeah, right now it's like 7 millimeter chip that they put into the PS5s, and that's also causing some of the shortage on top of the semiconductors.
Hmm.
They're looking into lowering the footprint from 7 millimeter to 6 millimeter because they do them in like big straws where they cut them
Hmm.
and they put in the machines.
Yeah.
Putting them at six means that they can produce more,
Hmm.
and it would go. They've done this all the time. Like the PS4 that I got at launch got redesigned in the same model a year later, where like the one that had like the matted top.
Yeah.
It had like the shiny left side, if you remember,
Mhm.
then became like this the same material
Yeah.
altogether. Like they do all this kinds of stuff to maintain the price, but make them cheaper for them to manufacture.
Mhm.
So they see apparently there were that someone in Taiwan made the report that Sony's already looking into that to try to make more machines. So anything to counteract the immense demand this machine has.
As
So
long as they're not like compromising the integrity
yeah,
of it, then I say all for it
they even
because that's
say
just
that the chip
efficiency.
they even say that the chips would make the console even better, like perform better.
Really?
Like like it happens. Like the Xbox One, that happened to when they moved to the Slim, and they put a different because the Slim, it's technically the same machine. It's just the form
Yeah.
factor is smaller, but they put in innards that make them perform slightly better, but not enough to be like, look how what a leap is this.
Mhm.
It's just the nature of uh, a better something more recent. Always the thing that's more recent and newer is going to perform slightly better, but not enough for it to be like disadvantageous for the way for day one people. That's just more of a concern if they move to like a pro model again, where they have to like completely rework their innards and
Mm.
make a huge leap in technology. But it's just the tiny thing that gets better for it to be produced more. So
I'm all for it.
it seems that I'm gonna be in that nightmare trying to get this console for much longer. But enough of that.
Yeah.
Quickly, so Nintendo, real quick. We talked last week. PlayStation and Xbox and did their earnings. I didn't quite get how much money Nintendo made, but they were massive. They sold a lot last year in 2020. Now they have recorded that they have sold 84.59 million Nintendo Switch units.
Oh my
And
goodness.
just keep in mind, 4 years in the market.
Mhm.
It took the PlayStation 4 5 years to when it launched to go at 86 million. The Switch did it in four. 84.59 million Nintendo Switches. And their big 2020 release, Animal Crossing, 32.63 million copies in a
Gosh.
year.
I mean, let's be honest,
They
that
put the basket, like all the eggs in the basket paid off.
that was the
Insane.
perfect time
Yeah.
for that release. The most perfect time. I will forever now hear the theme song of Animal Crossing and think of March 2020.
Yeah. That
And
game
the
the game
crazy time that
that and
was.
the pandemic and the Animal
Exactly.
Crossing was like the perfect marriage,
Hmm.
man.
It,
And
it blended it perfectly. We were still not sure if we were gonna have to go outside with gas masks and stuff. I remember people
mhm,
talking about that.
yeah, it's
My
insane.
gosh.
But yeah, insane that Nintendo gamble of putting all their eggs in that basket that year. Really, because 32.63 million copies. They have sold more than any exclusive Sony has made, and even Xbox. Think about that.
I do hope they don't take the wrong lesson from that
Mhm.
and then focus on like two big games every
Mhm.
year.
Yeah,
Um,
that's something that they could only get away with last year. They
right.
can because that's not gonna. Their other games are not gonna sell that. Like for example, another modest seller like Super Mario, the re-release of Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury that came out in February. It's already not 2 months later, and it's already at 5.59 million units. That's good for 2 months in the market,
Hmm.
and for a re-release of a Wii U game that barely sold. So again, the Switch really is the difference. This is reviving all those games. And so real quick, like the top five sellers for Nintendo of all time right now for the Switch, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at the top, 35.39 million. That's a re-release of the Wii U one. Just
Right.
yeah, obviously we mentioned Animal Crossing, the 32.63 million. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, 23.84 million. That's more than any Smash has sold. So again, the Switch factor. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild at 22.28 million, and that's the best-selling Zelda game ever. Again, because it was a launch.
Oh yeah.
So and Pokemon Sword and Shield, that despite all the hand wringing about the T-posting animals and the half-baked
Lack
nature,
of
yeah, and
animation, the cutting of the Pokemon decks.
yeah, 21.1 million still sold. So
time.
Yeah, Nintendo's still big. I want to see what Nintendo does this year. They're gonna be 83. I want to see what they give us. Already, we know that we're getting Skyward Sword in July, and
Hmm.
the rumor is that they're holding to their best the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess Wii U versions for the Switch for later this year for like the actual celebration of the 35th anniversary,
Hmm.
because they have to celebrate anniversaries a year long for some reason. So
Weird.
so we'll see. So
If
let me blast through this once,
Yep.
and then yeah. So Sony filed a trademark for Sunset Overdrive. Paul, do you ever play Sunset Overdrive on Xbox
Oh
One?
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, Sony, now that they own Insomniac Games, they filed the trademark under their whatever, however
If
trademarks
they
work.
can put Sunset Overdrive back out, that will, I think, easily double their money because Sunset Overdrive was before its time.
Yeah. It
Um,
was the first year of the Xbox. After the first full year of the Xbox One, it was the fall
yeah,
2014 exclusive
I will
from
never
that.
forget the trailer they gave. I think it
It
was
was
at
so
E3,
amazing.
wasn't
E3
it?
2013. Yeah.
And the guy leaning back to the soldier dude's like, "Oh, let me guess, third-person cover shooter," and I
Mhm.
think I about lost my mind.
Yeah.
Um, that was such a fantastic game. I loved everything about
Yeah.
it,
And the
and
thing is that it made it clear that that kind of game, the Xbox audience, it's not about that kind of game. That's what was sad about it.
it was very interesting to see it
They,
flop like that.
yeah, it flawed. Like it reviewed excellent. Like it was in many lists of Game of the Years that year. It didn't quite win. More Shadow of Mordor and Dragon Age took it, but Sunset Overdrive what was like up there, and it was in the console that was selling least. And I feel on PlayStation it would sell more because that's the kind of game that would be at home there.
Hmm.
I think what makes it interesting is, yeah, Sony owns Sunset Overdrive now, but the first game is still under the Microsoft umbrella. They still own the publishing rights. So just to
To the
kind of
first
get,
game. Oh, so they can't like remake Sunset Overdrive, but they can make another.
yeah, like for example, and I put it here, like the original Titanfall, that was an Xbox One
Yeah,
and
that's
PC
true.
game. That wasn't on PS4. And apparently Microsoft made a deal so that that first game could never make it to PS4. I don't
Hmm.
know if for an undetermined amount of time. It's been 7 years since Titanfall 1 came out.
Hmm.
7 years, Paul. It's been 7 years since that game.
I guess it goes to show you that when you do that and then you make a sequel and you
Mhm.
just put you just leave it all on the field. Because now with the success of the new update for Apex Legends, Titanfall 2 is actually at the highest numbers on Steam it has
Yeah.
ever been,
It
and that
helps
makes me
that they made it
so
free to
happy.
play. Yeah.
And free to play,
Yeah.
yeah.
But that's the thing. It could have gone free to play and no one would have cared. But because they had that synergy going, it has
They
revived
timed it out
Titanfall. Yeah.
because they that this specific DLC is so heavily voiced in the lore of Titanfall 2 because the character that is introduced is the daughter of a boss that you kill in Titanfall 2.
Hmm.
I mean, spoilers for a game that's been out for several years now,
5 years.
and he wasn't even like a big boss either. So like, I didn't even remember who it
Hmm.
was
I need to
until
play
I
that game
went
again.
back and went, "Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
guy."
I need to platinum that game. I still have to beat that game in master difficulty.
That was a great game.
So great.
Master difficulty. I think I tried it, and when I
It's hard,
died
but
in one shot, I
yeah,
was.
that's the thing. It's hard, but it's not Call of Duty veteran hard,
That's
considering it's from
true,
the
and
people
I
that make Call of
somehow
Duty.
managed to do that. I don't know how I did that actually.
A lot of patience, and we were younger.
Yeah.
I don't have that patience anymore.
Mm.
But I did beat Call of Duty 2 on veteran last year. Remember, I got all the
I
achievements
remember
on.
you were telling me about that. I don't know how you did that.
Yeah, that almost I almost broke controllers, but it's still shiny and safe. My transparent Xbox One controller that you can
Oh,
see the
it's beautiful.
innards.
I can barely see it, but
Yep.
yes.
So for people to see that, yes, we talk about PlayStation a lot, but I like all platforms.
Mm.
So Game Pass
You
for the
know,
win.
I'm realizing we got off a little bit on a tangent there, but we were still in the middle of
Yeah,
telling what we were
the
talking
Sunset
about with that one,
Overdrive.
right?
Yeah, so yeah, because to give the context for Titanfall, that Microsoft had that arrangement, and the sequel
Hmm.
never came. But also another tangent, like the original Mass Effect was published by Microsoft originally, like Mass Effect 1 back in 2007. Then
Oh, that was a first party?
yeah, that was it was a second party because
Oh, okay.
Microsoft didn't own BioWare, but they had an arrangement where they would make exclusive games
Oh,
for BioWare.
yeah.
But then EA bought BioWare, and Microsoft struck a deal to try to keep Mass Effect 2 exclusive, but because it was now under EA, the arrangement wasn't quite the same. And then it came to PS3 a year later, and then
That's right.
Mass
Because
Effect
Mass Effect
3.
3 came out, that
Oh,
was the first one that
yeah,
came out on everything. And that's
yeah.
why, because so many people were not sure of what the game was about,
Mhm.
because PS3 players were playing it for the first time.
Yeah, and if you bought like, I didn't play Mass Effect 1 until much later. Like my first one was Mass Effect 2 on PS3, and Mass Effect 2 had a comic that would catch you up
Hmm.
on Mass Effect 1. You can make like key decisions because the whole thing about that game is making decisions that
Hmm.
went on the whole trilogy.
That was one of the
So,
first games that really leaned into that idea of, oh, what you did in the first game carries over.
and no one does it anymore. I think
No
everyone
one
got
does.
scared at how it fumbled at the very last minute, the ending in Mass Effect 3. Then everyone was
Mm.
like, no, it was not attempted. Look how everyone hated that. But it was they hated it because they were promised something that they didn't quite deliver. But before I go into that tangent, Mass Effect 1 was published by Microsoft in 2007. In 2012, December, the first game came to PS3 after Mass Effect 2 and 3 came out. But it did come out on PS3, and that was
Okay.
5 years. So I wonder if Microsoft also has an indeterminate amount of time for the publishing deal for Sunset Overdrive.
Hmm.
But any sequel that would be on PlayStation, like a Sunset
Yeah.
Overdrive 2 can be there, but I think it would behoove them to get that first game there. But
That would be amazing.
will Insomniac have the time? They're working on Ratchet. They still have Spider-Man 2, which has a lot of mechanics from Sunset Overdrive that they implemented there. There's rumors that Resistance may be coming back because Drew Murray, the director for Sunset Overdrive, that also directed Resistance back
Hmm.
in the day, came back to Insomniac. And writer Walt Williams, who wrote Spec Ops: The Line and the campaign for Battlefront 2, shooters, part of Insomniac right now. So, tinfoil hat.
Hmm.
They may be working on a shooter also. So, will they have time for Sunset Overdrive? But
That's crazy, the idea of like, okay, well, we're putting this puzzle piece together of this guy that did this thing,
mhm.
this guy that did that thing, this lady that did this thing. That means they've got to be making this kind of game. And
I
most of the time, it has been pretty much right.
yeah, because people like and another example, like for example, when Gorilla was making Killzone
Hmm.
back in the day, they hired Jose Gonzalez, the writer for Fallout New Vegas, an RPG, and that was like in 2013, and they were like, why would they hire an RPG guy in a studio that primarily makes shooters? They're making
Hmm.
Horizon, an RPG. So you can always and they hired the director that created Rainbow Six Siege recently. So you can also tinfoil hat and be
Jeez.
like, and they announced that Guerrilla expanded to be like a multi-team, uh,
Hmm.
like a multi-team studio, kind of like Naughty Dog initially had like two teams and then they folded in one because their games were getting delayed. But they may be also working on a shooter there that's kind of like Siege. So it's funny how when you can see the hires and infer. So
Yeah, and that's almost like a game in itself, trying to figure out, all right, what kind of mechanics is this next game going to be? And what do you like? Then it kind of becomes this idea of like, what's your dream game out of these things that you're put in front of you?
yeah,
What would you take from the game that this guy made and that guy made, and
yeah.
how would you make it, you know?
In the case of Insomniac, I feel like the Sony first party ecosystem needs a shooter again,
They
just
do.
to diversify their portfolio that became too full of third person open world games.
Yeah. Well,
So
here's a crazy far out ballpark suggestion. Bulletstorm.
yeah, but
I just recently played, like
the PS
before we
Plus
did,
one, the
yeah,
PS
the
Plus one,
PS
yeah,
Plus
yeah,
one,
I
the
got.
full clip edition,
Uh-huh.
and I never played that. So the idea of slowing time with like a kick to shoot an enemy that goes flying into something else and having like the physics of the corpses go flying in different directions and whatnot has been
So
immensely entertaining.
I have a bridge to sell you. Play
Okay.
Outriders. It's from them. It's literally from them.
Ah,
Well, like literally, if you like that, imagine that, but on a third person shooter.
I know,
Yeah,
and I
and I got to
the
play that on Game
similarities
Pass.
weren't lost on me,
Yeah,
but
made
I
by people who
guess
can
if
fly.
I
This,
can
yeah,
find it on sale one day,
yeah. Well,
maybe.
it might. It's been a strong seller, and another advantage why Sony needs a Game Pass equivalent because I played it through Game Pass. That's how I got sold on that.
Yeah,
So
that if I didn't have so much pride, whew, Lord have mercy. If I didn't have so much pride in not wanting to buy Game Pass, even
mhm.
though it's only like $10 a month. I'd probably open myself up to so much.
Oh yeah, eventually you will. You'll get there. I have
Eventually,
I have my friend Josh who was also the same way. He
yeah.
managed to snag a Series S that he's gonna get eventually because he just got told it got delayed, but he got sold on Game Pass and seeing there's like 373 games there.
Jeez.
Last he checked.
That's a lot of games.
Yeah, there's a lot of choice, and at least you can. And it's not demos; you get the full thing.
Hmm.
So that's a great way to like try games you wouldn't necessarily buy unless it was on sale. So,
Yeah.
and on top of that, once they're in Game Pass, and if eventually they leave, you can buy them at half price. So there you go to your
Right.
sale, and you already started playing. So
They've got such a good system.
yeah, but yeah, Sunset Overdrive. Back to the our most tangent
Yep.
thing. So yeah, hopefully it makes it to PlayStation because I feel it will fit better in that ecosystem. But we'll see. Another so the second of the final stories of the day. So close to a month and a half ago, Sony revealed they were partnering with prominent game producer Jade Raymond, who, if you're an old school game player like me that learned about news, she used to be a producer for the original Assassin's Creed and the later Splinter Cell games.
Mm.
She, after she was at Ubisoft, she went to EA, to EA Motive, to help establish EA Motive, the guys that made the campaign for Star Wars Battlefront 2. Then, for some reason, she left EA and went to Google, to Stadia, to make so many high profile quality games that are coming left and right. Oh no, they didn't. They closed down their first party without ever releasing a single game. So and she got out. And she got out and a month later Sony snagged her and is helping her make a studio in up in Canada. And they just announced that they hired 6 staff members from the first party development team.
Huh.
What they're planning on working on, who knows? But it's just finding interesting that yeah,
Shoot. I
they're
mean, we just went on that uh, back and forth about the idea of making up games based on what hires
mhm,
say. So who knows what
yeah,
this is? But if we look up whatever they were known for, then
mhm. It'll be
we're
the
in for
same.
something interesting.
Yeah, and hopefully, it's not just another open world. Please, please no. Just Sony doesn't need no more of
Well, at
those.
least Splinter Cell never really went with the open world
Yeah,
idea.
and I
That's
think that's why Splinter Cell never came back. Probably Ubisoft has been
oh
trying
shoot.
hard to make it, and it hasn't worked. So that's why they haven't done it
Yeah.
back. And I believe they can because remember we had this conversation back in the
Hmm.
day in between when we were in a hiatus that Sergey Haskell dude, the one that had to leave after impropriety, like
Yeah,
sexual
yeah, yeah.
harassment
Yep.
things,
And he
was
was the one that was pushing that.
yeah, he was pushing like he probably was. You can blame him for Breakpoint being the Breakpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Which is kind of messed up that I actually enjoyed that game so much
it's gotten
in
better.
the end.
Like in Ubisoft fashion, they've reworked a lot.
Mm,
It's not the game it was back in 2019,
that's
but
true.
their reputation of the game is so trashed by how bad it was that it's not the combat story like the Division was,
Hmm.
Siege was, For Honor, many games from them. And speaking of comeback stories that may or may not come as like for our final story, the director of The Witcher 3 has resigned from CD Projekt Red following an internal investigation about, you guessed it right, harassment complaints from the director towards employees. Here's what's interesting, Paul. The investigation concluded he was not guilty from what he was
Hmm.
what he was being pointed at for that investigation. However, he still resigned, following claims that he felt that there was a tense environment from his peers, and he didn't want that to be like an elephant in the room. So he left. It should be noted that this director, I don't have the name, and I'm gonna not gonna even attempt to find it and spell it because it's a very interesting Polish name. You can just look it up, the name. He worked as a second director for the beleaguered Your Beloved Cyberpunk 2077.
I just based on reading this out, whether or not this guy actually quote unquote harassed people,
Mm-hmm.
um, the fact that he still resigned because he felt the tense environment from his peers, as was quoted,
Mm-hmm.
they clearly didn't care what the official
Mm-hmm.
verdict was. They are going to ostracize the hell out of that man for the
Mm-hmm.
rest of his career there. And I think he wouldn't have been able to get anything through the door without immense backlash or just fighting it, like
Yeah.
hitting a wall at every chance this guy was going to push something. Um, so I think even if it might not be the definition of like quote unquote harassment by the book,
Mm-hmm.
whatever he did do was enough to get him basically banned from
Yeah.
any sort of credibility.
Yeah, and that's what I always find interesting, especially about this in the post Me Too era.
Hmm.
Hashtag Me Too, because obviously I support any victim that comes forward and claims something, because most of the time it tends to be true. But I also support the right to innocence until proven guilty, because I've seen many that like investigations have turned out correct and people have been fired,
Hmm.
so the process works. So, and in this case, like the investigation didn't turn out anything, but he still left. So
And
maybe,
I've heard
maybe,
separately besides this story of the immense amount of I mean, I'm not even going to touch the idea of crunch time, but
mhm,
certain people, one of which that I followed for a while on Twitch that used to work for CD Projekt Red, was very vocal about her disliking of the treatment she would receive
mhm,
from superiors and peers.
yeah,
And
yeah. The crunch in City Project Red was horrible, like was horrendous,
mhm,
especially in the later parts of Cyberpunk, where it also led to the delay after going gold. Remember that whole thing?
that
Like
that was just a
historic. Like
mess.
few games go gold and then get delayed
Yes.
and come out like they did.
And that's one of those things where if you don't have a solid central line of authority, that's what happens. When you have like the marketing team is in charge of one aspect of it and it
Mhm.
isn't communicating with the actual team, then you get this group that's saying all of this really specific stuff. And then another team that's saying, I don't know why you're saying all of this. This is not right at all.
Yeah.
But then one is way more public than the other. And then you're like, well, who do we believe in the first place?
Yeah. To
Yeah,
me, I just feel bad about City Project Red, like the shining star of the last generation with The Witcher, who
gone.
this director, who this director made. All that went down the toilet with Cyberpunk. It still amazes me that that game is still in the process of being rebuilt. The patches still haven't helped, like the
Mm,
base version of those consoles, which I don't think can ever be fixed.
I don't think
It's
so either.
but those are the games those are the versions of the games that trashed them. You played it on PS5. You
Hmm.
had a relatively good, albeit buggy experience. It wasn't the revolutionary open world that they promised, right? You can like admit that after playing that, it wasn't like after that was sold as
Oh
the
yeah,
next step. It wasn't.
there was a lot cut out from it. It's the same thing that I've had with Final Fantasy 15, which I just read or watched a really great video essay by Super Eye Patch Wolf on
Mm-hmm.
that one.
Ooh, the story for that one's interesting for how long it was in
Yes,
development
the
and how
exact
much changed.
details and stuff that I've forgotten. Um, which like the general idea of that game was amazing, but just the sheer ambition of it and the lack of really just clamping it all down into something distilled and capable of shipping. The whole idea that the game goes from open world to extremely linear
Linear.
halfway through.
It's a sign of
Um,
development. Like you can't like
yeah,
the rescoping that had to happen to get that thing out the door.
just I mean, I could talk about that one for a long time because I really thought that was going to be like the definitive end all be all for my favorite game because I love the environments, the characters,
And that's the
everything.
thing, like there's so much objectively awful about that game, and I still love it.
I
I don't
know.
know what is it about Final Fantasy 15 that I enjoy so much. I replayed
And
it like 3 times, and
really,
it's a long, yeah, and it's long, and it's like I know there's so much wrong with it, but I think it has that that special sauce in it that just makes it really good, despite knowing that objectively there's so much wrong with it.
hmm
And I hope Cyberpunk eventually gets there, but it's just sad that this was Icarus. They
hmm
flew too close to the sun and came crashing down in spectacular fashion. That was your most anticipated game last year,
it was
and it
there was
got
a very big gap between that and everything else.
yeah.
And I will say I did thoroughly enjoy Cyberpunk still, of course, thanks to
You
the
had a good
PS5.
experience, yeah. Mhm.
And it was overall because I still had crashes constantly, but like there were ways to mitigate that, and just the sheer amount of creativity, like we talked about, the ability to build this completely broken character in a certain way. Like you can hack into a computer, spot everyone through walls, and then use a specific gun to shoot through the wall
Mhm.
and
All
just
of that sounds
end
awesome.
entire groups
Yeah.
of people, and just different things that you can do in that you can't do in many other games. But gosh, it just misses the mark in some ways that are
Yeah.
very obvious.
After the February patch, because I had it on PS4, like base, so not even a Pro. Apparently, it runs decently on the Pro. Ironically, they say the PS4 Pro version is the one that runs the game best, not even the Xbox One X
Really?
version. Yeah,
Hmm.
which is really interesting. But on base, it's a dumpster fire. And
Ugh.
by the time I reached the patch on February, and it's still the frame rate got. Remember the video I showed you, the one that got featured in Forbes?
Mm-hmm.
That like at that point, I was like, this. There's no saving this. So I was like, I'll wait until eventually, whenever I get the new machine,
Mm-hmm.
maybe in 20 years, I'll play it in the proper way. But yeah, CD Projekt Red, they still their redemption will come but it's gonna be very hard fought. But just as quickly as they rose, they quickly crap the bed, and it's sad. But just goes to show that don't get too hyped about everything. Even the very best of all of them can
Mm-hmm.
fail. And on that note,
Alas.
yeah, and alas, that's the end of the news and the end for this week's show, Paul. So I want to thank everyone that listened to last week's episode. We had quite a good response for that episode. From
We
more
did?
people watched it than many episodes after our debut episode last year. And
Thank you.
hopefully we can, yeah, thank you so much. And if you like what you listen, give us some feedback in the comments.
Yes. Tell us what we did wrong.
Yeah,
Am I
exactly.
wrong
Yeah,
about really loving Cyberpunk? Is Alejandro really wrong for loving digital everything?
yeah.
Let us
Tell
know.
us, yeah, engage with us and tell us how we can make things better. We'll always strive to make the show
hmm
better, especially now that we've taken on this and finally properly equipped for this. And don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us here on the X button in our umbrella at Escape Entertainment, because remember, we always need an escape. And right on cue, the
Is that the guy with
yeah,
the?
the vegetable guy's back.
He's back.
So they have no rhyme or
the
reason of
the
when they come
unofficial
in.
third person
Yeah,
in this podcast.
the vegetable man.
We got
Yeah,
to interview the vegetable man on his thoughts
yeah.
on Cyberpunk next on
No,
the X
right here
button.
on the X button. So yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at a_drosegovia, and you can also follow me on Twitch at the Slayer Giant. I may be looking into starting streaming again. I started streaming for a while and then stopped. You can follow Paul here at Dork of Art, right,
Yep.
on Twitter, and also at his Twitch, which is
Angel Sword 21.
yeah. We better
Don't
go
do too
stream
much of it,
something.
but I
Yeah,
really want to go back one day. If I'm not streaming either Resident Evil 8 one day, maybe I'll just get on
Hey,
something,
we better play something together.
which we do.
We might as well.
Maybe one day we'll finally
Yes.
actually do the survival guide of me going back to Destiny 2 with no understanding
Ooh,
and you
I'll
being
be
the
your
big guy.
Sherpa. I'll totally Sherpa
Exactly.
you. The new
I have
season's out.
no
Yeah,
idea what's going
oh yeah, I
on. I
forgot
have
the new
opened up
season.
the first Destiny 2 since it went free to play once.
Oh no, that was the onboarding of that was beyond awful. So, and speaking of Destiny, the new season starts tomorrow. So, other than
How
Mafia,
do
I
you
know
know
I've
how much the
$10.
season? $10?
Yep, $10 per season,
How much? It's like $10 each for each season, so I'd have to
and they
like.
last like 3 months.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right,
So, all right.
we'll
So,
figure
thank
that
you.
out.
Yeah, we'll figure that out, and thank you so much for everyone that listens. And until next time, press X.
To play.
Peace out.